Hey, this is Giacomo Smith from Kansas Smitty's, and you're listening to Live at 5. Before we start today, I just want to remind you that we rely on your support to continue through this period. So remember to subscribe to this YouTube channel and click on the link in the description below to see where you can donate, sign up for a Smitty's membership, or buy our records and merchandise. Thanks a lot for tuning in.
And we're back live at 5. Just reading in the chat that we're having some issues with Giacomo's microphone. So, no, still not getting anything. Let me see what I can do. Absolutely. So while I was trying to figure this out, we're going to play one of Alex's tunes. This is on the banjo. So for those who don't know Alex Honey Boulton, he is a Kiwi, a New Zealand guitarist and banjoist who was living here in London and working for Kansas Smitty's over the last year. And he sent us a banjo piece called I'll See You in My Dreams. go. I think we're back.
So, in the words of the Verizon telephone man, can you hear me now? Can you hear me now?
We'll get an answer in about 20 seconds, I think.
No, he says it a lot of times. You see, Darce. It's an American commercial, so you have to say, "Can you hear me now? Can you hear me now? Can you hear me?" It's a
there's definitely input coming in now. So for the benefit of the 35 people that are tuning in right now, Giacomo, do you want to tell us a little bit about the first video that we saw today? That was a recording of the Kansas Smitty's Big Four playing Muhlenberg Joys.
Yeah, definitely. So as you wouldn't have heard me say before, I was going to introduce Darcy O'Connor, who's our producer, and this is his first day on camera. So he waved.
Hijacked.
You probably heard him, but I still want to say hi. And Darcy had a great idea for the Fridays and Saturdays of these live streams so that you get a break from our mugs. And that is to go back through the Smitty's archives and find videos that you may have been in the audience for, and just performances that we've accumulated over 5 years of being at Smitty's. And the one that you saw today was from about 4 years ago. I just found a GoPro in my drawer at home when I was clearing out some stuff this morning, and I thought, oh, well, let's see what's on this. And it turns out that there was some Smitty's Big Four footage from 4.5 years ago when we'd kind of just opened the bar. And it's super fun to go back through this footage because some people look younger now, some people look older
different
now.
Yes, in the case of Abe.
Exactly. Yeah. Some people had made some fashion decisions, and that's okay. We all make decisions, but sometimes upon reflection we realize that decisions had been made. So so on Friday and Saturday this week, we're going to be playing back both sets of that Big Four concert. And we're going to try and kind of simulate a Friday and Saturday vibe at the bar. And Darcy and I are going to pad out some DJ sets on either side of kind of jazz records that all the way from New Zealand, a man who has, in a short time become, for lack of a better phrase, has become part of the furniture of Kansas Smitty's. He's a joy to be around, and he's a wealth of knowledge behind the bar and on the stage and in the audience and everywhere. He's just a great person to have around. And that's Alex Boulton.
Hi, I am here.
There he is.
There he is.
Honey.
Lovely to see you guys. Very nice to see you bright and early.
Yeah, it's what time is it over there, man?
It's 5:15.
Wow. Look at how sharp he looks at 5:15 in the AM. And
why'd you get up so late, man?
yeah, dude.
Giacomo, I think, with respect to this great man getting up and looking this good in the early hours of the morning, we need to sort of up the game a bit. What do you think?
I'm with you, man. Yeah, we did extensive preparation since, our past interviews. Today we did kind of a more extensive prep ahead of time. So we're just gonna get ready for the interview if that's okay with you, Alex.
That's
okay,
absolutely
fine. Hold on one second.
Shouldn't take too long.
Okay. Oh my goodness. For those of you who can't see, because I assume you can't, Giacomo is now putting on a tie.
Okay, here we are. Wow, Mr. O'Connor.
Oh, Mr. Smith, looking quite dapper.
Looking good, Darce.
Is this how ties work, Alex?
You guys are looking fantastic. You guys,
thanks very much, man. One thing that we are missing is our mint leaf lapel pin, which I can see, 16,000 miles away on you. And for anyone listening, you can get one of these lapel pins if you become a Kansas Smitty's member. So I just thought I'd sneak that in there.
It's like a constellation. I saw Venus the other day from Mexico, and it wasn't quite as bright as that badge. It's amazing.
Oh my goodness! I'm really digging the tie underneath the collar look, Darcy.
Oh well,
I thought that's how it's supposed to go.
Yeah, I've gone for more the above look. I think you'll see this on the runway in Milan when it opens up again.
So Alex, clearly we didn't just invite you here today to talk about fashion, and we want to talk to you about music, and that banjo clip that we played in the beginning, I think is just amazing, because I know you obviously as a highly accomplished jazz guitarist, but what's the deal with the banjo? I mean, was that kind of your avenue in, or what's that, a later thing?
What's the deal, man? What's the deal? Basically, I mean, I played banjo seriously before I played any guitar. Well, any jazz guitar. Banjo was kind of my avenue into getting into jazz. I was listening to a lot of early music, and basically a lot of the Alan Lomax archive, bunch of those early kind of clawhammer banjo players playing 5-string, kind of early Appalachian tunes, and things, Southern American tunes, and that kind of led me down the path of coming across early jazz, and finding the tenor banjo and plectrum banjo, and a bunch of Sidney Bechet recordings, and then that just kind of started my trajectory into jazz music, and that's kind of how I started guitar. And I've just kind of stopped playing banjo as much, which is a little unfortunate, but I'd like to get more into it.
So what was the scene like? I mean, did you grow up in New Zealand, or did you grow up in? I know that you met Darcy at some point when you were kids. Where did you grow up?
I grew up all around the place in New Zealand. So a lot of my, all of my musical development, I suppose, up until moving to London, was done basically in Auckland and Wellington, because I started playing music seriously when I was in my final year of high school, with the intention of going to study jazz at a conservatory. But before that, when I was in Australia, I was quite into punk music and hardcore music, which is how Darcy and I initially crossed paths. We never actually met at that point, but we were both in the same scene, and it turns out I was a drummer and very average vocalist in a punk band back on the Sunshine Coast when I was about I think maybe 13. And Darcy was a little older, so we crossed paths back then, but never actually met until Kansas Smitty's.
Yeah, it was kind of surreal. So to add like a little bit more context to the story, like Alex, I grew up in Australia, not New Zealand, in Brisbane, and when I was in my late teenage years, I started playing in a lot of punk and hardcore bands, and my first proper band, Acid Snake, we were playing a show. Yeah, I know, right?
It's just amazing.
Yeah.
So great. I mean, and now you guys work at a jazz bar. It's amazing.
Well, that's exactly, like, it's amazing how it all happened, because there was one. So Alex arrived in London, halfway through last year, and he just came to the show, and it was such a cool, he was just such a cool guy immediately, like won over everyone that worked behind the bar. And then when I sort of leveled up and became the manager, we were looking for some new staff, and I thought, oh man, that Alex guy would be great to have around. about 3 weeks after he started, we were reminiscing about our early punk days, and he was saying like, oh yeah, we, this band, that band. And I was like, oh, that's funny. I was at that show. And we realized that we were in the same place at the same time a lot of the time. And then it kind of came up that he played in this band, Jailbait. And
I did not want to mention
well,
that name.
Sorry. I think it's worthy. And I was like, no way. And I've played with probably hundreds of bands in the very short time that I was playing music. And this one was so memorable because there was this 12-year-old kid in the band that was dressed in like a full old-timey stripy like jail suit. And they switched instruments every song. Like each member of the band was like, one was the drummer, then they were the singer, then the guitarist. And it was just like burnt into my memory because it was very memorable. We played this show in like a garage on the Sunshine Coast, which is just north of Brisbane. Wow. And yeah, and then, I was like, oh my goodness, like I know that. And he was like, yeah, that was me.
This is like the Chitlin circuit of teenage punk in Southern Australia. It's like, how many times did you guys cross paths? You must have done it a few times.
Definitely a few times, but in such a short, concentrated period of time, like it would have had to have been 6 months, wouldn't you say, Al?
Yeah, I'd say like 6 to 8 months, because it wasn't very long that we were doing these like house parties. They didn't last,
No.
like a lot of things when you're a teenager. You kind of you're set on this path and you just kind of you pursue it relentlessly for 6 months until you find the next thing, and then you're like, oh goodness, like
yeah. I think time moves slower when you're a teenager. I actually think it does. I think there's a space-time continuum where somehow, a 6-month phase, you can go so heavy into something and then be like, actually, and then like the next 6 months be making fun of some other kid for being in that.
Man, not much change. I absolutely dig that concept, and I think it's still kind of it's still happening when you're 18, when you're 20, when you're.
So Alex, tell us. So you sort of alluded to it earlier, but tell us about how you went to New Zealand again when you were like 14 or 15. Correct me if I'm wrong. And you picked up the banjo because you were listening to all this kind of music. Like, how did you get into that kind of music in the first place? Because I feel like a 15, 16-year-old that's listening to Appalachian folk music isn't, the normal thing, especially in Wellington.
I think if I can trace it a little further, or just create a link, because this isn't something that, I think most people, when they start listening to a certain kind of music, or it's never like, I like this now, this is my thing. It more, basically, I think what happened was while we were in Australia, and I was listening to punk music and hardcore music, I was also at the same time parallel listening to a lot of Johnny Cash and a lot of Bob Dylan.
Sure.
So I was listening to folk music, and I think it was actually a lot of those early Johnny Cash records that got me listening to the banjo. Actually, sorry, the later Johnny Cash records, when he started going real like acoustic country kind of bluegrassy. And then that got me into the Carter family, and so that is how I would, if I was to put like a stamp on this is what got me into that, then I would have to say it was my secondary listening at my time in Australia led me to Johnny Cash, which led me to the Carter family, and then the Carter family.
For the Americans out there, he means the Carter family.
Not Carter.
Well, Carter. Oh, Carter family.
Yes. Now we understand you.
JP and Mother Maybell.
Yeah, Mother Maybell. Exactly. There you go.
But yeah. Yeah.
Amazing.
But yeah, is that? I mean, and then just when I moved back to New Zealand, I had a lot of time on my hands just at school. I didn't have a huge friend group, so it was just a lot of time spent with the instrument that I was fascinated with. I went through a whole lot of periods of trying out different instruments. Actually, in this house, I found an accordion, which I tried to pick up at one point, and I actually had one of those auto harps that
Wow.
yeah but I landed on the banjo and stuck with that for a little while, and then eventually the guitar.
Amazing, man. Amazing. Well, we might jump into the next tune because it seems like a good time. Can you tell us a little bit about this next guitar-based tune, the Thelonious Monk one that you sent through?
Yeah, this is one of my favorite ballads. I mean, just favorite tunes in general. But this is a solo arrangement, I guess you would call it, but just through the head of a tune called Round Midnight. And for anyone out there who is interested, my favorite version at the moment is definitely the Charlie Parker Live at Birdland, with Bud Powell, Art Blakey, and Curly Russell on bass. It's just, he plays the head so beautifully, and then there's an incredible Bud Powell solo through it, just super melodic. So yeah, this is Round Midnight.
That's Honey Boulton on Round Midnight. And Alex, I just wanted to ask you, because it's a question that a few people have asked me. What's the what's the deal with bebop? What does it mean as a jazz term, and how is it different from other forms of jazz?
Well, I think to put a slight header. I think a lot of the initial musicians of the bebop movement, I think to begin with, that wasn't even really a name that they were fond of. In fact, they kind of moved away from it. There are quotes from Charlie Parker saying, you know, I don't want it to be called bebop, but it should just be called music. But I think in this day, it's a term that when someone says it, or if you know what it is, you know what it is. And so I think it has been accepted as a term. But for me, I think bebop originated in basically after hours jam sessions, when musicians, after their real gigs, and this is talking New York, you know, after Kansas City, we've had the Count Basie band and all of these incredible jazz artists. You know, they're doing their legitimate gigs, getting paid to do dance band sets, like 4 or 5 sets, and, you know, playing through until 1 a.m., 2 a.m., and then they finish the gig. And then there were a bunch of clubs open. Minton's Playhouse is one of them, which is a lot of famous recordings, including the Charlie Christian and Dizzy Gillespie recordings. Swing to Bop is one of that's what has been titled for the Topsy tune that they play. But I think it's there were so many people there were so many artists that were a part of it. It's hard to really assign to any one artist, but I think when you think bebop, you think Charlie Parker, you think Bud Powell, you think Dizzy Gillespie, and you think Thelonious Monk, and these are people that were, pushing the boundaries of what jazz was at the time in the 1940s. And to me, that's what bebop is, and it's developed, but it's still that I think that ethos still rings true of pushing the melodic boundaries and rhythmic boundaries of the jazz in the 1940s.
Sure. So that's a kind of I'm totally with you on all that. And I just wanted to clarify to people that the reason I ask about bebop is because Round Midnight is commonly referred to as the theme song of bebop, even though it's, that some people say it's the theme song of jazz, but it's, it's a big progression in jazz composition. It's a Thelonious Monk composition, and it has very complex harmony, as compared to things that might have come before that. And it's kind of the epitome of what a bebop song would be. And Al, I think for me, the big thing in bebop, the big difference kind of from a social perspective, is that it's when jazz really moves from being a popular dance music to being a niche listening music. And it's also associated with the intellectualization and the kind of the willingness to be seen as the geniuses of music that they were, of the African Americans that were playing that music. So it's quite an inspiring social period in jazz music to see people like Dizzy Gillespie and Charlie Parker and Bud Powell, and then the modern jazz quartet, and a lot of these people be taken seriously as virtuosos of their instruments, not just as people who played in nightclubs.
Or entertainers. They were the art musicians of the time. I absolutely am on board with that. In fact, to go back to Round Midnight quickly, apparently the original Cootie Williams version of Round Midnight Bud Powell took it in to Cootie Williams, and he said, I want to play this tune. Like, we have to play this tune. And Cootie Williams initially said, no, we're not going to play this tune. It's too strange. It's too weird. And Bud Powell threatened to leave the band if they couldn't play the arrangement. So actually, that it was one of those things where it was like, oh, we've got to do this, and it set the way. So I mean, yeah, even the front running musicians and the people who were running those dance bands, or those popular music bands, even they couldn't accept it somewhat at the time.
Yeah, I think the dance band culture is really, is the place where bebop is born, and bebop is the counterculture movement of dance band culture. Because, I mean, I don't know if you know that great quote from Dizzy Gillespie. Dizzy Gillespie said that bebop was the product of a lot of, highly skilled musicians doing the same thing for too long, because they would go to their gigs and they would play 4 sets of Begin the Begin, basically, which is like a kind of vanilla, albeit beautiful vanilla dance band tune, one of the great ones. But do that for 4 hours, and then think, oh my God, why did I start doing this? So soul destroying. And then they go to Mittens, and all of a sudden the tables are turned. And this is kind of another quality of bebop from a musical perspective, is that the composed element of bebop is far inferior to the improvised element. And that's kind of where we see the birth of what we call modern jazz. And if you look at that as a kind of defining point between, what goes on now in jazz and what went on before, that 1941 line is kind of the biggest jump, I think. It's because the music goes from being primarily melodic with an inflection of improvised soloing, right? Where you have like one guy stand up and he goes, and that's the solo, right? But all of a sudden, then you go to like,
you're it.
Fats Navarro at Birdland in like 1951, and it's like the only composed music that you hear is about 10 seconds at the front of the tune, and then it's just all improvised, right?
Yeah, I mean, hearing those, like the home recording tapes, the inferior quality, but hearing those musicians at that time in a live context where they can stretch out, versus the because the recording at the time meant that even the bebop tunes, they could where they might normally play 9 or 10 choruses on a blues, they have to take 2. But hearing the way that it was intended and the way that it was to begin with, there's something really special about being able to hear those recordings. Like you say, Fats Navarro 1951, just stretch out, and it's just no one, it's out of sight. It's incredible.
Yeah, man. Cool. Well, I think we should listen to some more out of sight music from you. Can we jump into another tune, Darce?
Yeah, we've got this one's a little bit of a curveball, and I could not believe that you'd only just discovered this song via one of the Kansas Smitty's live streams from the other day, Alex. Can you tell us a little bit about it?
Yeah, I am quite surprised that I hadn't heard it either, because it's such a it's such a lovely tune, and it's so up my alley, so to speak. And I was since I haven't been able to be at the bar anymore since I was watching all of the live streams, the Live at 5, and I think one of the coolest things I got out of that is the repertoire. Basically, I've just been hearing a lot of new tunes, and one of them was this one, Hard Times, which is on an album It's called Ray Charles Presents David Fathead Newman.
Great name. Just great name.
Amazing name.
What can you do
Almost
better
as
than
good as Alex Honey Boulton.
Almost.
But yeah, it's an incredible tune, and I mean, because I had heard the Ray Charles, there's like a 12/8 blues type thing that he's done as well, and it seems to have a tiny bit of crossover, but this one seems to be, this is the one for me, I think. Just like the arrangement and everything, like the baritone solo for me is a but so yeah, if you want to hear the original, definitely check it out. Ray Charles Presents David Fathead Newman. But this is Hard Times, which I also think one of my favorite things about this song is that a title like Hard Times, you're expecting it to be, I think you're expecting it to be somber and slow and like a, ballad type or a 12/8 blues, something that's low and down. But I find that this is a hopeful Hard Times. In this tune, I hear, I see a light at the end of the tunnel.
Beautiful. Right now.
Amazing. So product mid rehearsal. But what I was going to say was that you're listening to Live at 5, And if you could, please subscribe to this channel. It makes a big difference to us, and we'd love for you to know whenever we're going live. But also, if you want to click the link in the bio below, it'll take you to our website where you can find all about what Kansas Smitty's is up to.
And you'll be able to find the live stream link that gets updated daily in that Linktree link in the description below as well. But yeah, so Alex, we've sort of talked a little bit about you picking up the guitar and the banjo and stuff. And I want to know a little bit more about your time in Wellington and then the crossover to London as a professional musician. So I know you played with a group in Wellington. Who were they?
The main group that I played with a bunch of different groups that gigged regularly around Wellington, but the main one that I was playing in was called the Wellington City Shake 'em On Downers, and we were playing basically just 20th century American music, whatever that means to you. we were playing it, so it was very. It was a piecemeal band, that's for sure. Like I played some tunes on banjo. We did a few kind of second line tunes, and then a few kind of, some very strange like swing arrangements and hard boppy tunes. But yeah, so I played with a lot with that band, and yeah, just basically did the normal jazz rounds with many different rotating groups. In a place like Wellington, I think it's quite important to have a core group of musicians that you're not playing with every time, because in order to get the gigs you need to be having different sounds. It's just because of the smaller nature of the city and the less population, it's hard to specialize completely in one thing. It's quite a necessity to kind of put yourself out there for a bunch of different music styles. I mean, for me, that was still always jazz in some way, shape, or form. But whether that be, me as a banjo player or me just as a swing rhythm guitarist, I did a couple of big band gigs with like acoustic rhythm guitar, and yeah. So, I mean, it was just being adaptable in Wellington, I found was the key. But that was while I was studying. And that's kind of what brought me to the end of my study at the New Zealand School of Music, was what brought me to my decision to come to London, to go to London. Is just I was craving the bigger scene, and I wanted to see more scenes. I wanted to be able to know that I can go to this gig, and that I'm going to be able to see this quality of music if you're willing to look for the right musicians. And I think that's what I found. That's what I found nearing the recent months, is something that I really slotted into, that I knew the music that I was going to listen to. Basically, every night at Smitty's, I was like, this is, what I want to be listening to. And that's something that I didn't necessarily get in Wellington, not for a fault of the city, but just because London, there are so many more people, and it's it's just a wonderful scene.
Just to caveat that, he means every night except for when Dave Archer was playing.
Yeah, who's that guy?
But Alex, I mean, so many people that kind of, and this is from my area as well, and people who don't grow up in kind of global jazz centers, hubs, of which there are probably, fewer than, I don't know,
5.
8. Yeah, 5. Let's say 5. Most people replace the word London in your ambition with New York, right? So why did you come to London? Why did you choose London?
Well, I don't want to take the wind out of your sails because I think this is, I mean, this sounds like a bit of a cop out, but basically it was either going to be New York or London. And so probably reason number one is I had a British passport, so my life in the UK would be logistically a lot easier to sort out. It kind of 1B or 1A would be that I don't, living in the States at this point is not something that really appeals to me at all. Even if it were to be an incredible jazz scene, I just think the political climate over there, and I think also the rat race of New York City is something that me as a Kiwi, I'm not necessarily cut out for. Whereas I saw, I saw some familiarity, not in a necessarily like comfort zone sense, but I saw from all the research that I was doing before I moved, and but checking out a bunch of players and clubs that were in London, it seemed like the kind of place that I could really settle into and call a home, rather than just slogging, which is basically what looks like the New York hit is. Which is, it's for some people, and I just don't think it's for me. Whereas at London, I just found a home at Smitty's, man. And that, I think that's what did it. Is places like that.
I'm gonna jump in because I want to make sure that nobody sees Darcy crying on camera. It's just streaming down his face. It's really difficult to watch. But Alex, we miss you so much here. For so many reasons, and we can't wait until you get to come back and resume your spot at Smitty's, behind the bar and on stage and everywhere in between. But I think we have one more segment from you, which Darcy, you can introduce because you know what's going on there.
So Alex, I mean, I miss your face. I miss your music. I miss your general presence. But I have to say that the thing I miss the most is walking into Smitty's and getting served a delicious cocktail that has been slaved over and labored over by you. Would you be able to, with whatever you have in your quarantined house, to be able to show us how to make some sort of a cocktail that we can get through this tough period with?
Absolutely. Well, I thought you'd never ask, Darcy, because it's nearly 6 a.m. here, and I think I need a drink. So basically, yeah, this is basically just quarantine bar vibes. If you've got a bass spirit and access to sugar and access to citrus sugar,
right,
and then you will be able to make a Collins. So this is the quarantine version of a Collins. Well, this is a normal Collins, but I chose to show you this and to make you this because this is all I have, Darcy. So you better appreciate it.
Whatever bass you have, either electric, double, synth, yeah, start with that. Just go up from there.
So my favorite is a rum. You guys know me as a rummy. So
yeah, big rummy.
But for I think to start at the basics, I think we're going to do a Tom Collins, which is the OG. So basically, the Tom Collins is basically just gin and homemade lemonade is the component to it. So you're going to need, I mean, I've got Gordon's because that's all that was in the pantry, but you'll need a London dry gin. I mean, if you want to use a flavored gin, then you can do that. But I think that London Dry will give you that juniper hit that you want. And then you'll need some lemons. There's an old lemon tree out back, so they're not the prettiest, but they still juice. And then you will also need some simple syrup.
Juice me.
I'm juiced already, mate. I'm juiced already. And then you'll need some simple syrup. So this is just strong simple syrup. So 2 parts sugar to 1 part water. And those are your only 3 ingredients. You want a Collins glass. This is what I'm using. So let's just get right into it.
I'm getting a lot of disappointed comments in the chat that you're not using Pernod or some sort of absinthe right now.
If I could get it, I would have it. Believe me.
Please send your Pernod reserves to Alexander Bolton at 3 Juniper Drive.
So this is a trick that I learned recently from the discarded page, actually, because I don't have a jigger here, but this is an egg cup, and this is 1 ounce. So we're going to need 1 ounce of London Dry gin.
Very resourceful. I love it.
This is amazing. This is like MacGyver crossed with the Today Show. Like amazing.
We're going to juice. It's usually the juice of about 1 lemon. What I'm going to do is I'm going to take a stripe off this just for garnish later on. Grab myself a knife. I'll be right back.
You call that a knife?
I see you've played Knifey Spoony before. That actually is a ridiculously tiny knife.
It's just such a good line. But that's from your homeland, isn't it?
Yeah, that's the Crocodile Dundee spoof in the Simpsons Australian episode.
Amazing.
So here we're just juicing the lemon. So we've got 1 ounce of. Oh, sorry. We've got actually. Yeah, that's not looking strong enough. I'm gonna add a little bit more gin in there because I like it on the juniper side.
6 o'clock soon. Let's just
exactly.
Up, you know?
Exactly.
You need a solid breakfast to start the day.
I love it. He's even got the egg cup for breakfast. It's great.
So, and then you're going to want half of that amount of lemon juice. So I've put 60 ml of gin in there. Make it 70, and then we're going to want 30 ml of lemon juice. Put that in there. Then we're going to want half of that amount again of simple syrup.
How do people make simple syrup, Al?
Okay. So in the on the stove, I make mine on the stovetop. You can just do it with boiling water, but to make simple syrup, you just need sugar and water. So what I did is I put basically I didn't weigh it. I just put 2 cups of sugar, 1 cup of water, and then you just slowly heat it down until it is the consistency of
that. So it's 2 to 1, 2 to 1 sugar to water, boiled down on the stove until it's a little bit jelly.
Absolutely. And so all of the sugar is dissolved. And if you want to put a pinch of salt in there, it kind of, it just nice. It won't hurt. It won't hurt you.
Secrets.
We're going to add that. I'm just going to, now what you're going to want to do is top the glass with ice. So I'll grab my ice.
He's on it, man.
This is so good. I feel like I'm behind the bar and we've got, a 21st birthday or something again.
And somebody's asked for a Tom Collins, or everyone's asked for a Tom Collins.
Everyone's asked for a Tom Collins, and they're demanding the band play Happy Birthday.
Just while Alex is mixing this in, remember that you're listening to Live at 5 and watching Live at 5. Tomorrow, our guest will be amazing drummer Jazz Kaiser. And on Friday and Saturday, we'll be bringing you videos from the archive of Kansas Smitty's. So this Friday and Saturday, it's going to be Kansas Smitty's Big Four on a concert that I just discovered this morning from about 4.5 years ago. So that's Pete Horsfall on trumpet, Dave Archer on guitar, Ferg Island on bass, and me. So tune in for that. And remember to subscribe to this channel and to click the link in the bio. How you doing, Al?
I'm staring down here. So that's what we've got all our ingredients in. We've topped with ice to give it a bit of a stir down to dilute. And then if you've got it, soda water.
Okay.
Helps give it a bit of a pop at the end. Sometimes though, basically a spoonful of still water will help dilute it enough. But if you don't want the fizz, but the fizz is lovely. So I'm going to top that with soda. Express the lime on there. Love
Express
that.
yourself.
Love that. I'm expressing myself. I am. And then pop that in there. And here we go. Tom
Amazing.
Collins. So this was a favorite at Smitty's. And I'll just give you the old,
Well, can we have some too?
I'll pour it.
Just pour a bit.
There we go. Yeah, just right in there.
Oh, what do you guys have? What are you drinking?
Tom Collins? What are you drinking?
Oh, sorry. Yeah.
I found this like clear spirit underneath the sink. I'm not sure what it is, but bottoms up, Alex.
Oh, that is lovely.
It was lovely to chat with you today. You've been listening to Live at 5. Giacomo, do you want to take us out?
Thanks so much, Alex, for joining us so early in the morning. And we miss you, and it's amazing to see you. So thank you. And thanks for the instructional vid.
Thank you guys so much for having me. It's been a blast. I wouldn't want to start my day any other way. So
now go back to bed, please.
Yeah. My goodness.
Cool.
Thanks, guys. Cheers.
Cheers,
see you,
Alex.
everybody.
Thanks again for listening to Live at 5. Remember to subscribe to this channel and click on the link in the description to see where you can donate, sign up for a Smitty's membership, or buy our records and merch. See you tomorrow. Thanks again.